Welcome to Leadership Rediscovered. I'm your host, Laura Siebold, and today I'm really excited to be joined by Alex Reneman of Mountain Leverage. Alex, thanks for being here.
Laura, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk today.
Yeah, this is going to be a good conversation. Alex Reneman is the president and CEO of Mountain Leverage, a warehouse productivity solutions company based out of Grafton, West Virginia. An entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, veteran, community leader, husband, and father, Alex is a lifelong West Virginian, having grown up in Grafton and eventually returning to start and operate Mountain Leverage. Over the years, Mountain Leverage has quietly grown in the West Virginia hills as one of the state's drivers in innovation and the industry's largest and most knowledgeable team of workflow optimization and voice technology experts. Locally, Alex has established a nonprofit, Unleashed Tigert, and partners with more regional programs dedicated to identifying and addressing the high-level needs of his home community and surrounding areas.
Wow, when you put it like that.
I know. Kind of a big deal. How
Sounds
about
cool.
that? I know. All right. So let's jump right in. Again, serial entrepreneur, which I think is super cool. I want to hear your journey of just take us from the beginning. How'd you get started to where you are right now?
Yeah, that's when you hear serial entrepreneur, you think Silicon Valley, one IT company after another, tech company after another. That's not really what my history is, but I kind of always was entrepreneurial minded. But when I say that, I don't know whether I always was or not, right?
Yeah.
And I know leadership journey is an important concept for you in this podcast, and I think it is important. The weird thing though is I think it's less about my journey and more about the calling that others asked of me along the way. And either you answer the calling or you don't throughout your walk. And, there were just lots of opportunities to be a leader or to create value. And so you look at an entrepreneur, it's finding the hole or the gap or the lack of some kind of offering that can create value in the world. And yeah, sure, can you monetize it? And those things are important, but can you actually execute? And can you build that and grow that? And so there's just tons of opportunities for that kind of stuff. And once you begin looking at things that way, it kind of forms, and it kind of you see more opportunities. And the challenge sometimes isn't finding opportunities; it's making sure you say no to enough of them so you can focus on the ones you do want to go after.
Yes. That's interesting because as I'm listening to you talk, I think about, picturing you probably as a kid just constantly problem solving and fixing things. I mean, was this something that started early on for you?
Yeah, that's probably it. That's the crux of all things. I can remember my dad will tell stories sometimes where, for instance, we would go to an amusement park, either the local fair or whatever, and he tells a story. And I don't know where we were with it, but we're on a ride, an amusement ride, and he points over, or he says, I point over and said, Dad, there's only one pin holding this thing together. And he looked over and he said, he was right. And the rest of the time, Dad was, kind of scared the whole ride. And of course, you would think engineering mind, right? That's how an engineer thinks. Well, sure, but and I probably could have enjoyed going down an engineering path and kind of did from a software perspective. But that idea of solving problems, understanding how systems work, whether they be physical systems or even human systems and populations and organizations and teams, that really was just exciting. And you learn more and you become a problem solver, and then you look for more problems to solve. And that can sometimes be a problem because all problems don't want to be solved, and some people don't want you to solve their problems. So you got to get some restraint over time. But you're right. That's really where it starts, is solving problems. And then, you find that solving problems is a valuable skill. And all of a sudden you kind of try to monetize that and make that part of your career. And that is a huge piece of the puzzle. Because I think lots of folks, and you see it at every turn, where lots of folks create something that's neat. Okay, it's neat, but does it bring any value? Does it solve any problem?
Yes, and that's so true because I listen to a lot of business podcasts, especially for business owners, and in marketing, and a lot of it is either you've created something that's neat and then you're trying to create the problem that it solves, right? Versus, go figure out what the problems are, where the gaps are, and then create the solution for that, which it seems like you've done Walk us through all your businesses because you've done some really cool things.
It starts like you said. When I was a kid, I was doing various different things, right? Like most kids, I was cutting grass, doing those kind of things. I can remember selling comic books that I had gotten from toys we had bought as a kid. Just weird stuff. Just trying to, not that I ever made any money doing any of that, but learning kind of the process. But when it's funny when I get back from when I left college, I was already in the summers working construction for my cousin over in DC.
Okay.
And used the skills I learned there, and I was doing vinyl siding on the last year of my college to help pay for college and my room and board and all those kind of things. And it occurred to me, hey, I could just turn this into a business. And so what was interesting is when I was graduating college, I was ready to start a construction company and do vinyl siding and other things like that. That was totally the path. And I can remember, at every step along the way, you can point to people who have offered you wisdom that have just absolutely changed your life. And I can remember Professor Spangler sitting down. He says, why don't you hedge your bets? Because I'd gotten a call from Deloitte Consulting at the time out of Pittsburgh, who was a business consulting firm. And he said, why don't you hedge your bets and go check that interview out and just see. Well, I go to the interview. By the time I get home, there's a message on my machine that says, hey, we'd like to offer you a position. And I'm like, well, let me try that. I can always go back and pound nails.
Right.
And that really began an amazing experience. I mean, to be able to go to a company like Deloitte and learn and see what goes on at that level. You talk about opening your eyes to the world in a way that I didn't have before. Now, I still love the work. I love the physical work, but I didn't want to necessarily be doing it at the end of my career, climbing ladders and pounding nails. Not that against anything. That's great work.
Yeah.
But man, once I could see there was even more that I could do through that consulting side, that really started it. So after a couple of years at Deloitte, that was in the midst of September 11th, 2001. Okay. And when that happened, it changed a lot for me. Again, there's multiple watershed events in everybody's life, and that was one for a lot of us. And it was one of those things where I was doing great work. I was living in Pittsburgh, which was cool, but I was traveling out a lot, but I wasn't really providing any value for the community. My family back home was here, and I was there. And you have this big event that happens, and I was like, wait a minute. This isn't aligned with where I want to go, who I am. So I said, I'm gonna go back and start my own business and go back home. And that had always been in my mind anyway, but I wanted to bring some economy to Grafton, to the small town that I'm from, a great town. And in the process, really what I was about to do was go back to vinyl siding again because I wasn't sure what to do that. Well, when I put my resignation into Deloitte, one of the customers I was working with reached out and said, hey, could we they reached out to Deloitte and said, could we contract Alex if he's willing to do it for a period of time while we're in the process? And Deloitte agreed, and they contacted me, and I said, okay, that'd be cool. That'd be great, right? So that started my first, really remote business, if you will, was post-implementation support for accounting systems, ERPs, those kind of things. And I did that for about 6 months until I was deployed to Iraq. So that kind of put a hold on some things. So I'd started a business. I was ready to rock and roll. And that, I kind of expected that was coming anyway. But so you got fast forward now a year and a half later. I come back. And I remember sitting around and I had met this woman who's now my wife. I was like, okay, got to find a way to provide for her. And I'm talking to, again, another event of a mentor who Jerry Summers told me. He says, hey, you're going to have to find a way to make some money. He said, man, you're talking about marriage. You're going to have to figure something out. So immediately I go and start like 6 businesses. So
panic.
So he still asks this day. He's like, maybe I took his message a little strongly. But I was in everything from and lots of them were failures. I think that's always the thing often missed in these leadership journeys, if you will. You got failures left out. You screw up all the time, and that's part of what it trains you to find your right path going forward. And I still mess up every day. But I was in a bowling alley. It was in a restaurant. I was in technology, remote or a regional PC services business, design. I'd have to go down a list of lots of things that we were into. And some were successful, some marginally so, some miserable failures, but they all were an education and an experience. And I met a lot of great people along the way, learned how to maybe insulate yourself from some not so great people along the way, right? It's all part of the journey.
A ton of exposure.
And in that part, though, I had a colleague, a friend, call me up, Jeff Thorson. He says, hey, there's this company in Pittsburgh who has this kind of voice technology, needs some help. Can you come up and check it out? So I do that, and immediately I recognize this technology. I go, wow, I can build a business around this. We can do some real stuff with this. And that was the underpinnings, the birth of Mountain Leverage.
Okay.
And over time, slowly kind of jettisoned everything else and put all of my focus into Mountain Leverage.
Super cool. I have so many directions I want to go in. So, well, I'll pull back for a second on you served in Operation Iraqi Freedom, correct?
I did.
So
Yep.
thank you for your service,
Thank you.
first of all. And I am curious to hear because one of the things I'm passionate about is leadership being a skill that's not necessarily taught as consistently or effectively as technical skills are taught. And so I will say, you know, from just my personal experience, especially working with veterans that I've encountered in the workplace, I do feel like many of them have been taught leadership skills formally and informally through their military service. So if you're willing, I would love to hear about how that may or may not have shaped your leadership style.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and I think your observation's right. I mean, there's a ton of leadership training available in the military, whatever branch you're in. But there's also there's also a great example of how leadership fails in the military, and that is what it is.
Yeah.
What you see oftentimes in a hierarchical structure like the military is folks might get promoted into a position where they're now a leadership position because that's the only way up.
Right.
And they really shouldn't be. They're an expert at their job or whatever they do, and now they're being asked to be leaders, and it happens in the corporate world as well.
I was just going to say, you've seen that a million times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so now you have this hierarchical model that stifles true leadership and stifles, you know, the flourishment of the people sometimes. And so that was such a juxtaposition because you're getting really good leadership training, but also getting really good examples of where it fails.
Yeah.
And I took it all in and tried to apply it. And I you know, that was a great experience. I mean, those are fantastic guys that we were together with, and it was not always fun, right? I mean, it's war, but it was one of these experiences I often say is I would never want to do it again ever in a million years, but I would never replace it for anything because it did help shape me. And so I say there's peacetime leadership training and there's wartime leadership training, and certainly those are very different, and some are more formal than others. But that experience, once we were deployed and you're looking at decisions you make potentially has life or death ramifications for the guys you're over there with, it changes everything. And it puts everything in perspective. And still today, I carry that perspective with me when things look grim, when decisions are tough, the conditions are difficult. You know, nobody's out there shooting bullets at me and launching rockets. And I don't have, you know, the life and death situation. Yes, there's people's livelihoods and those things certainly that are in my decision making sometimes, but it's not their life and death. And so it has allowed me to have some chill in crazy moments.
Right.
But boy, I'll tell you, there is some really good training in the military for that, and they've spent a lot of great research. A lot of the great leadership research that's come out comes from our military services. I mean, they put the money in it. So if it's there, if you're looking for it, you can find it. It's great.
Find it. Yeah. So talk me through how I know you have chosen to locate Mountain Leverage in Grafton. And I'd like to hear, you know, what led to that decision because, you know, and I know you've worked outside of West Virginia as well, but from West Virginia.
Yeah, I have. You know, it's funny. When I moved back from Pittsburgh and then you go to Iraq and then I come back, but for the first 10 years, I would say most people still didn't know I lived in West Virginia because I was traveling out all the time to work. You know, we're getting, look, right now in West Virginia, we're getting some nice economic wins, and that's fantastic, and let's bring them on. The more the merrier. That wasn't always the case.
I was going to say.
This hasn't necessarily been
not so much probably
the
when
mecca
you were starting out.
Right. So starting a remote company, a technology company in West Virginia.
Many years ago, too.
Yeah,
I mean,
this was back in 2004.
Yeah.
So that was not an easy thing.
Right.
And so I was traveling out a lot. So I think there was rumors around town when I worked for the government, was I secret, you know, because I was never around, but I was living in West Virginia. So that's an interesting story. But the reason I came back to West Virginia, you know, first and foremost, it's my home. I mean, I grew up in Grafton, and I wanted to come back, but I guess, you know, there's a couple different paths you go when you grow up in a small town in West Virginia or Appalachia or any small town USA, wherever.
Yeah.
One of those is, you know, you hit 18 and boy, I can't wait to hit the county line and the state line and I'll never see you again, right? Some of those people are happy where they land up. Some of those people are, oh, man, I wish I wouldn't have left. I want to come back.
Yeah.
I was not that. I was more, okay, I'll move away to learn the skills and gain whatever I need to gain, but I want to come back. So that was ultimately part of my plan to come back. When I wasn't sure, I had an opportunity that I could start my own business. I did that. At that time, the broadband infrastructure wasn't great either. So I literally, at the time before I went to Iraq, was going to my girlfriend's house to work because she lived on the way to Fairmont and had broadband.
Better service.
Crazy. So anyway, but when I got back from Iraq, Grafton had broadband. It worked out perfect.
There you go. Perfect.
So I digress. So that whole process of coming back was awesome for me, but it also was sobering because I realized I couldn't find the skills that I was looking for at the time. And so that was a real challenge. But and it took me several years. There's a couple threads, and I could go a million different threads here, but I think there's probably three things that are really important about me staying located in Grafton, being located in Grafton.
Yeah.
One of those is I really wanted to drive revenue into the area from outside the area instead of passing money around the community. It's fantastic to
love
do
that concept.
right? But there's a lot of money outside of our communities that can come in. I mean, they've shipped a lot of it out on coal trucks and whatever else, right?
Yep.
So we can try to get it in through technology, our smarts, our work, whatever it is. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things. The other piece, and this goes back to when I was a kid, and it really kind of dovetails in with the leadership journey. Over time, when you're from a small town, there's always, like I said, there's callings for you. There's people who look at you and see something in you that you don't see in yourself, or maybe they're projecting onto you something they want. But either way, you don't see that, and as you grow, you kind of pick it up. And there's all kinds of folks who have helped build me and grow me in my community. That I owe them to a certain degree. I owe them to come back, and whatever goods I have, I want to offer it for my community. And there's one poignant moment when I just graduated high school, and I was working for the assessor's office, and it was a great job. I would drive around and say, "Hey, have you changed your property?" Now that sounds like you're not always welcome.
I know. Saying I worked in the assessor's office and it was a great job, I wouldn't have necessarily put that all in the same sentence.
Well, it was. Yeah, you'd have some people like, "I didn't change a thing. Get out of here." So okay, fine. But and I mean, you got propositions at times, you had dogs chasing you, all kinds of things. But I can remember one visit. I went to a lady I'd never met her, didn't know her, didn't know the name. And small towns usually know the name or they know your name.
Yeah.
She didn't know me or anything. And I'm at her, and she had cookies in the oven, and just salt of the earth, the kind of people that are around here.
Yes.
And she's like, "Can you stay for some cookies?" I said, "Sure." She hadn't done anything to her property in 50 years. I don't know. And so I'm sitting there, I'm waiting on cookies because of course.
Of course.
And she goes to get the cookies, and I look over on the fridge. And it's a picture of me, and so the previous summer I had the honor to go to Boise State, sponsored by the American Legion, and then ultimately was able to be one of two kids to go to Boise Nation.
Wow.
So I met President Clinton when I was there.
Very
of course, it was a big deal for a local, so I was on the paper, and she didn't know that was me. I knew. I mean, I didn't know, and I asked. I said, "Ma'am, what's She goes, "That young man, he's from here, and he just met the president. I'm just so hopeful for him. I had to put him on my fridge."
Oh my God!
And tell me about it, right? And I'm sitting there, and I'm going, huh. And so it's those kind of experiences with local people that, like, they're invested in the success of you, and for me to squander that is absolutely a travesty. So I've carried sometimes a little heavier burden than maybe was real, or maybe I should have, but I can't lose that. You can't shake that. You can't shake that moment. You can't, and I could tell you dozens more like that. So being responsible that I have to give back to my communities is a huge piece to that. I think those two, the piece I just covered, that's really important. That's why I'm in Grafton. The third didn't come to me till later. Most of my career, I've been apologetic for being from West Virginia, not embarrassingly so. I mean, there's times I've embarrassed myself, but
well, we can embarrass ourselves from any state.
That's right. There you go.
Not just here.
I live just below the embarrassment state most of the time and pop up in it quite a bit. But so anyway, the whole idea when somebody asks me, especially in technology sales, when I'm traveling around the nation, around the world, selling, training, whatever, they say, "West Virginia? Really?" Because they see West Virginia however they see it, right? We're bucktooth, one leg long than the other, whatever. Fine, I've heard them all. Funny. You're a really funny guy.
Exactly.
But the neat thing is, over time, I would say, well, it's a great place to raise a family. True. I'd say it's a low stress environment. True. People are nice to me. True. Great neighbors. True. All these things are true. But I presented them all in an apologetic tone. And it occurred to me, it's been several years now, when I looked at Mountain Leverage, at the core of who we are, the core concepts that what make us great in our market, they're West Virginia. They're West Virginia things. And all of a sudden I realized by being back home, I stay connected in the roots and the ideals that have made us great. And so it flipped it completely on its head. It's a strength to have my business based in West Virginia, regardless if I have to go. I don't have a customer in West Virginia. I don't have very many employees. The ones that are here, I love it, stay here. I've hired a bunch. They moved out. But it's a strength to be based here. And I'll not change it for the world. So those are really the three things that drive the reason why I moved here. here, moved back here, and why I've stayed here.
Yeah, and I love it because I'm not originally from West Virginia, although I like to say that I'm a West Virginian by choice.
Excellent.
And I see that, and that's why I am here and why I will always be here, because there's just something about the people here, the spirit, the work ethic. So and small towns sometimes get a really negative connotation too, but you just shared such a wonderful example of the beauty and the benefit of a small town as well.
No question. I mean, if I grew up in Silicon Valley, I'm sure I would bump into founders all over the place at a coffee shop or yoga studios or wherever, right?
Right.
But when I was walking the streets of downtown Grafton, I would run into World War II vets and railroaders and coal miners and people who experienced shopkeepers and mothers and grandmothers and people who knew life. They understood life. Maybe they couldn't tell you what an algorithm is. It doesn't matter. They understood it and they lived it. And so I had that kind of tutelage, and I can always dial up all the greats on an audiobook or in a book to read or on the internet or whatever, and I did that, and that was so. Yeah, I absolutely see it as a strength. Now, maybe all small towns are that way. Maybe you find those gaps in big towns. I don't know their experience. I just know that's been my experience, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Yeah, now it's becoming a competitive advantage for you instead of something that you apologize for.
No question. And look, I don't ignore the problems we have.
Sure,
I mean, we've got challenges, but you can't only focus on the challenges when you have so many advantages that are not always easily seen, but they are there.
Yeah. So Mountain Leverage, tell me how many employees you have currently.
So we just crossed over the 50 mark, and we're going to keep going. I don't know. We're not growing just to grow, but we're bringing on some great folks, and we're right in that range. I don't know where we'll be at the end of the year. We'll be a little bit bigger. We're always kind of looking at opportunities, whether that be through organic growth or acquisition, and it's a fun ride. I mean, in the entire history of Mountain Leverage, and we do the primary part of our business is in supply chain. It's hard to explain to people what we do, but the pandemic basically uncovered all of that, and supply chain is in the news constantly.
Oh, everybody's talking about
supply chain, right? So it's the moment, right? So it's a pretty neat time to be in this industry and to be in the position that we're in.
Yeah, and something I am curious though is I think about the skill set and the motivation for being an entrepreneur, those skills, but then also being the leader of 50 plus people, compare and contrast that a little bit for us and what that's like to be, the entrepreneur, but also the leader of a really big team of people.
Yeah. As a kid, you ever taken two magnets, flip them, and try to hold them together?
Yeah, because they can't work.
That's what it's like being an entrepreneur, a leader.
Yeah.
But it's a really good point. You separate those a little bit because there is different. I mean, and that's the challenge I have with a monolithic definition of a leader, because I'm a leader, but I mean, I'm a father, I'm a founder, I'm a friend, I'm all these things. And sometimes I'm not a leader. Somebody else is leading, I'm following.
Yeah.
Or I'm supporting them or whatever. But certainly being a leader it can be at any stage of any company or organization or community or family or whatever. But there's certain skills that are similar and all of that. But an entrepreneur, there is, and again, there's no magic to that either, but I think there's a different mindset of really just having this burning need to create and solve and architect and grow and just it's like this insatiable fire I just can't quench.
Yeah.
And there are business owners who are leaders and they've owned a business and grown it, and fantastic, and that's great. Entrepreneurs, again, I don't want to make like one's better than the other because it takes all kinds of different strokes, different folks. But the entrepreneur piece there is this just, it never turns off. It's what's next? What are and when you see something that isn't working, you don't just think, oh, bummer, that's not working. You can't turn it off. Now you're like, how can I fix that? Do I want to build a business to fix that?
Yes.
That's how I got into all those things, right? So I've been able to luckily turn that down a little bit to be a leader at times at Mountain Leverage, and not always be the entrepreneur at Mountain Leverage. And there's an ebb and flow, and I do have to ebb and flow into those different roles. And obviously that you're never all of one or none of the other or vice versa. But they're different skill sets and different mindsets.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I could see how typically it seems like you're, very much solving systems problems or, process problems, things like that. But I could see you easily, wanting to jump in and solve people problems too, or help someone solve a problem that maybe they should be solving on their own. And so I'm curious how you maybe manage that or balance that within yourself.
Man, I think, I absolutely have swung way far to the people side, to the point where I would almost say a sweeping statement that probably isn't fully true, but it's always a people problem, right? Whether it's a system, whether it's a technology, whether it's environmental, it's a people problem. It's a people challenge. It's a people opportunity, you know?
Right.
And so I've spent more of my time in the last several years, the more I've learned about leadership and entrepreneurialism and everything, it's about people. And everybody says that. And it sounds, it's all about our people, and we love of course, yes. But it really is.
Yeah.
And so when I look at a successful, so I look at our culture at Mountain Leverage, and early on in my career, you're fed all these things of what an entrepreneur should be, and what you should do, and the things that should be important to you. And I think we all grew up that with, whether it's in our certain churches or in our families or in politics or whatever. Right. Here's what you should believe, son, girl, lady. You check this out, right? Well, then as you get older, you're like, that never really felt right to me, and maybe I'm going to believe this or that, right? Yeah. And you grow into your own, and it's that same way in business. And so some of those things of, I'm going to grow and IPO and sell and be on a yacht and all those things, it never really appealed to me, but I was like, I have to think that way because I'm an entrepreneur. And that's totally not where I'm at now. Yeah. And what I've found is the real beauty for me in leadership is engaging with individuals and creating a culture that allows them to flourish. And if my job as a leader in Mountain Leverage and as the entrepreneur is making sure there's a culture that's set so it's consistent. You know what you're going to get in that culture, and now you can be you and let your freak flag fly and go do your thing and be best, right? Be your best self. And if I can create an environment for that, I've won as a leader, because now you're going to flourish. You're going to do your thing. And if you surround yourself with great people and then you create an environment for them to flourish, you don't have to lead anybody around by a nose. You don't have to throttle them with a stick. Right. You don't have to hang a carrot out there. All you have to do is give great people the opportunity, and the space, and the environment to flourish, and they will. And that's sounds simple, but
and I was going to say, I love this so much. And if you're willing to share any tactical tips, things that you've done, examples to share, because I do think this is elusive for many people of trying to figure out how do you actually build that and sustain it.
Yeah, man. So the challenge is I don't think there's a linear path, and so you can jump in at any point. And I'll just jump in. We'll go around the loop. I think one of the challenges when you start to think that you've got to fix your people, I got to fix this person. You're probably, and I say this from experience, and I'm not going to prescribe anything to anyone. It's like drugs. I don't know. I don't know what drug's going to help your problem, or exercise or food. You got to do your own thing. You got to figure out what works for you. But in this case for us, every time I've ever said, I got to fix this person, now, can I help somebody if they're looking for help? Can I help guide them? Can I offer them resources and coaching? Absolutely, of course. But when you begin to think, okay, I need to fix these people, that's the person, maybe they're not a fit for what you've got going on, or maybe you haven't done the right thing from an environment standpoint for that person to flourish. You're not going to be able to force people. And so I think I see that in leadership all the time, where folks are thinking, well, I'm a good leader, I'm a good motivator, I'm going to come in and just turn this around. And that's really tough. So I think for me, stepping back and always looking at the person, and to be quite frank, there's people all along the path. I mean, there's your customers. You got to think about your customers. They're people too, even though it's systems and money. And if there's no margin, there's no mission for them and for you. So you got to make sure the economics make sense. But if you're focusing on people all the way, you'll see the insights that you need to see about your business or about your organization or your family. I mean, it's all people, right?
It is all people.
It doesn't matter. I've said this many times, maybe the tactics are different, but it doesn't matter whether it's my 12 and 9-year-old, my wife and what we're doing, or it's our company and where we're at globally. Again, different tactics for different situations, but the premise at the end of the day is are you creating an environment for those people to succeed? And that's all it. So when you look back at tactics, one of the things it occurred to us as we got growing, I'd like to think I just came up with this as a stroke of genius at 18 and put this together and went IPO. But
in the book that you wrote,
that's right.
Leadership and entrepreneurism.
Exactly. But we have a pact, we call it, and it's what it is. That is our environment. So if you walk into Mountain Leverage from any stakeholder position, whether you're an employee or a supplier or a customer or a partner or any engagement, you should feel this environment. And once you have the identity, this is who we are as Mountain Leverage, this is the environment we're going to work at, that's where it all starts for us.
Yeah.
Then, your behaviors can change in that, and but the environment is what it is. So, if you're a fish, you're not going to decide to live in the desert.
Yeah.
And so, if you're a desert, okay, there's things that live in the desert. They don't live in the ocean. And so it's one of those things. What's your ocean? What's your desert? What does it look like? And it's not going to be for everyone, and that's okay, because there are other places for them to go. So when we look at our ocean at Mountain Leverage, it's the PACT. And it all starts, and it's an acronym, and it's a kitschy, so PACT.
I love this.
So P is possibility. So so intellectual curiosity is a huge thing for folks at our team. I think it's an asset. And so it's about possibility, not what we can't do or what hasn't been done or what somebody else has never done or they failed at. What can be done? What's possible? And then that's balanced by accountability. That's the A. So you got to make sure what you're doing is reasonable and brings value and all of that and can be measured. But then ultimately, what you're doing actually counts, right? That's important too. And that's the side of accountability we miss. A lot of times, leaders are all about accountability. Did you do what you say you're going to do? But is what you're doing actually counting, and do you know it? Do you see how what you're doing? That's right. Do you see how what you're doing is connected to the outcome that we're all trying to get? If there's no connection, there's a problem. And then there's the C, which is championship. And true champions lift everyone else up around them. And that's an important piece. And then the last, it's all wrapped up in trust. And so PACT, and so that's the environment. And if at any one point at Mountain Leverage or engagement with Mountain Leverage, you don't feel that environment, I need to know about it. That's my number one job. And sometimes that happens, and it's an ever-flowing thing, right? You're always trying to balance making sure it's just like an ecosystem. You got to make sure it's the environment you want. You start there, then you go into behaviors and all that, but start with that identity first. And the people who want to work in an environment like that will find you over time. So
and thank you for sharing that, because I do think I spend a lot of time talking to people who are unhappy in an organization and talking to organizations who are unhappy with the people in their organization. And you do find this mismatch. And I do think sometimes people try to sell their organization as a one-size-fits-all that everybody will love and everybody will thrive in, and that's not the case. And I love how clear you are about this is who we are, and you're bringing good things to the table. It's a great place, I think, to want to work, but not all people will prefer that environment or want to work in that way. Maybe they're used to something else in a different environment, and that's okay. But I think being upfront and clear about what it is and what it isn't, and then making sure that on the flip side of that, someone who is looking to potentially work, in this environment decides for themselves, well, what type of environment will I thrive in, and where am I going to do my best? And I don't think sometimes people take enough time to really think about that.
That's a great point. I think, we don't sell ourselves to prospective employees. We present ourselves, and then they make the choices, right? I mean, obviously it's a joint choice.
Well,
but,
sure,
but you're right. I mean, if we're trying to act like something we're not, I mean, when you get here, you're going to tell. There's no hiding who you are. I mean, once you're inside the house, it's pretty clear whether you keep it clean or not, right?
Right.
And so I think that's great. That's great insight you're giving to your clients and the folks because you can certainly sell somebody. And I'd say it's exactly the same way on the other side of the interview table. You can certainly sell yourself to a company, but if you're not who you say you are, everybody's going to know at some point.
Yes, because you have to show up all the time. People will say, Laura, okay, can you help me prepare for an interview and tell me how to answer the questions? And I'm like, you're probably not going to like what I have to say because I'm going to tell you, just be you.
Yeah.
And because whoever you are in that interview, that's how you're going to have to show up every day to the job. Yeah. So I can tell you the right answers to those questions from my perspective, but if that's really not you and that's not authentic and genuine, you're probably not going to be real happy in that environment.
It's so true. And that's that line you walk, right? So you need to be authentic, and you don't want to be somebody you're not. But, if in many cases you're trying to improve yourself at the same time, which is kind of becoming something you're not, but the core of who you are the one thing, I tell my kids all the time is, look, nobody can be a better you than you, and you can't be anybody else.
Yeah.
But yet we just try. We see it on whether it's social media or whatever, we try to be somebody else. And I'm still trying to figure out who I am, but I can only be me, and that's, you love me or like me. I mean, I'll try to be or hate me. I'll try to be nice. I'll try to do my thing, but I am who I am. But that doesn't mean, hey, I'm going to be this knucklehead, and I am who I am, and I'm not going to change. I'm going to try to improve over time. But it's always going to be me.
Good point. Yeah. and focusing on how can I continue to grow and get better and all of that.
That's right.
So how do you, because I can just see that your mind, and I know a lot of entrepreneurs are like this, where you're just constantly seeing opportunities. How do you pinpoint or refine what you choose to go after in terms of what problems you're going to solve, or determining, do I start another business? Do I start an organization? Or do I just let it go and say that's somebody else's problem to solve?
Yes. To all of that.
So hard. I can barely get it out of my mouth.
Yes. So one thing, the best thing of it. So sometimes you do just have to say no, and you can't let the you can't let the good be the enemy of the great. Sometimes you got to really focus in, and then sometimes you can't let the great be the enemy of the good. Sometimes you just got to get it done and move. But all the colloquialisms aside, one of the things I've done, which has been a stroke of brilliance on accidents, is surround myself with people who will help me. There are people who have much more discipline than I do, and those are the people that are around me. I have a lot of folks around me who are just brilliant in so many ways, and they can tell me, dude, you have your head up your rear end on this. This is not smart for us to do. I know you're excited about it, and it'd be great, but we shouldn't do this. And obviously we're kind to one another, but having those folks around me have been amazing. And so then it allows me to be me. I don't have to try, because early on, when it is kind of you're a one-person show, you do have to play those roles, which are against your nature sometimes, to be able to get further. And when I began early on, as I began to hire people who had those skills and personalities and things that I didn't, that I could then, I know Dan's going to cover me here. I know Julie's going to cover me. I know you got all these people I can point to, say, I know they're going to cover me in these different things. And that's allowed me to continue to be who I am. And flourish where I'm best. And that's a big piece of it, I think.
I love that. I think that is one of the challenges, especially when someone is just starting out, from scratch, building a business from the ground up, and maybe, they are the everything. They're the CEO, they're the CFO, they're the, marketing and finance. And, that's a lot to take on, because not everybody can be the master of all trades, right? So you're trying to, grow the business and run the business, and, and you have to be your own boss.
That's right.
Which is hard.
That's right.
And so being able to start building a team out where you can, and sometimes maybe it's outsourcing that work if you can't afford to grow a team organically within, but recognizing, hey, I can't do this all, or this doesn't really allow me to add the most value, and then finding those right people who can do that and letting them play to their strengths too.
That's right. I mean, that's so true, in that if you can identify, if you look on your quadrant, where's your genius? Where are you really happy? Where you're really good, and where are you? It's really you're the right person to do that. If you can find that role, and it's not going to be 100% of your day, but if you can find that role more often than not, that's where you want to get your focus. So how do you clean your time off to get there? And then wherever those things are, put somebody else there. And you're right. There's so many more resources now than there ever has been. From you could part-time people come in and do some marketing for you, or payroll, and all the things that might selling, whatever it might be. You can find people out there. But there is that period for any entrepreneur and any leader. You have to kind of fake it till you make it, to a certain degree. And sometimes you got to grab the shovel and dig the hole, even though you don't want to dig, right?
Exactly. That's so true.
Even though you're not good at it.
It's not real glamorous.
Right. It might take me 10 hours to dig a hole to take you to 2, but I got to dig it. So there is a phase of that, and it goes on over time. But I say all the time, there's not a job in our company that I didn't do at one point, but I did it poorly. And now you, Mr. or Mrs., whoever's there, are doing it way better than I was doing it.
You know the job, which helps.
So it's great. Yeah. So, I mean, that's so important. But I do think there's a message to leaders, to people, to moms, to husbands, to dads, to everybody. You got to be all things. No, I don't think you do. And again, this is just my personal philosophy, but I don't think you need to be all things. You try to be the best you can be, but there are areas where it's awesome if somebody help. I mean, if I had to do in our family, in my marriage, my wife, there's things if I have to go to the store to get peanut butter, it's an absolute national emergency. I can't, you go and there's 50 different brands and flavors and sizes, and I start to freak out. She just walks there, bam, grabs one and goes. And it's a silly example, but it's true. I'm fighting my nature to do otherwise.
That she's like, not interested.
Right. And that's okay. And that's just how a company works too. I mean, I think a healthy company works.
That's so true. Okay, talk to me about Unleash Tiger, because that seems like a really cool organization, and I want to hear about it.
Yeah, so Yeah, so Unleash Tiger is our nonprofit organization. We've kept that super quiet. I mean, I don't want to say we kept it super quiet. We just didn't make a bunch of noise about it over the years. It's been around for a long time, and we have 6 pillars really that we focus on, and I go through them all. But it's basically health and vitality, and education and culture, and economic vitality, making sure governance is solid, and so. Those are things that we just look for basic, kind of looking at the national happiness product or gross national happiness. Some of you have seen that before, right?
Yes.
So they have several pillars, and I kind of took that and said, well, how does that play to Grafton and Taylor County and West Virginia as a whole, and kind of put a mechanism together that this is a matrix we can look at and say, here's where we're succeeding or here's where we have deficits in our community. And I thought, okay. And then you look and say, there are tons of organizations in every community that are trying to do great things. Well, there's no need me to try to be that organization. Let them do their thing. If we can support them, great. Find the gaps, entrepreneurial. Find the holes. So taking an entrepreneurial mindset to the nonprofit space, to the culture or the community space.
Very cool.
And that's what we've done with Unleash. So we started out, one of the first things we ever did, there just seemed like a lack of clarity to governance and to the election process. And, you'd see a lot of people get up and say, my family's been in this area for 3 generations, and you should vote for me. Thank you. And okay, hey, great. I'm glad you've got roots here, and your pappy built a farm here 100 years ago. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But
tell us more about you.
what policies do you think are going to help this community? And so we just started interviewing folks and asking them questions about, what's your strategy for X or Y? And it's been a really I think lots of great comments back. We've seen over the years. I mean, that's been, I don't know, plus a decade, plus 15 years ago, I think was when we started doing that. And it's kind of a staple. It's people look for it every election. If we aren't to get word out, people are calling me. It's like, hey, you're going to do videos, man. I need to know who's running. I need to know what's going on.
Because you'll see signs maybe with someone's name, vote for this person, but it's like, I don't really know who that is. I don't know what they stand for. I mean, you have to really take the initiative to find out on your own if you're curious. How much better it is to have someone say, hey, we'll help you out here and interview these people and let you get to know them.
And the candidates love it too, because they get a chance to actually speak beyond sound bites, and especially now in today's political climate, my goodness, I got to be with you or against you or whatever, but it gives them a chance to go a little further than that.
It gives them voice.
Yeah, so I think that's just one area. That we got some exciting projects. Growing up in a small town in Grafton, there are always, we're going to do these big things. We're going to do these big things. And then you don't hear anything about it and it goes away. So we don't announce anything big. We just do it and then we'll talk about it after the fact. And so sometimes that gets an air of mystery, and that's not what we're trying to do. But Heather Hudson is our executive director, and she's doing a fantastic job. We've got several initiatives underway right now that I think are make and will make a real difference in our community. But ultimately, it's just about enablement. It's again trying to create an environment for people to flourish.
Right, absolutely.
And there's great people in our community. There's great people in every community, and finding ways to enable them to flourish is all we're doing.
And it's an interesting model because I feel like I'm sure there's projects that you need a good bit of funding for, but there's probably other things that you do that maybe don't really require a lot of funding.
That's right. I mean, we talk about those election videos right off the bat. That was me and a home video camera, right? And that was it. So very little funding. It's fine to get it going. And then there's other projects when you're dealing with property and things where there's a lot more capital needs, and that's new for us in that group. But it's exciting.
That's very cool. What projects or I guess problems do you see on the horizon that you're interested in solving if you're able to share?
Love
to hear, either business wise or nonprofit wise.
Sure. Oh, man. I mean, opportunities abound. They always do. I think locally, we've got real opportunity in Taylor County to continue to grow our population base. The quality of life there. I think that's huge. The economic opportunity there is still pretty big. And I mean, I think everybody in West Virginia, well, not everybody. You're either hey, the opportunity's great, or this is a terrible place. Why would you come? Right? There's not a whole lot in between. But I tend to be the guy on the other side. I don't ignore the problems we have, but there are so many opportunities, and so we're trying to find out where those opportunities aren't being filled by someone else, right? Because again, I don't want to step on anybody's. Let them do their thing, but we certainly see living. Working, right? Working environments, being ability to work remote, because not everybody can get broadband still in the state, which is scandalous in 2022.
I know.
But I can beat that drum all day long.
Wow, I struggle with it where I live too. So
so
I will march right alongside you on that.
So there's some things we're just, okay, we're going to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
Right, fine. Okay, we can't wait. We'll do it ourselves. But then on the business side, oh my gosh, there are so many opportunities for Mountain Leverage. We really are saying no to so many more than we can say yes to.
Mm-hmm.
But as we look at the market changing, we're excited about a lot of the automation and robotics and those things coming out. Those are all neat, and there's a lot of headline grabbing stuff. But what we're doing with our company today and the software and the insights that we're able to offer around somebody's operation, whether it be in supply chain or manufacturing or inspection or wherever it is, it's pretty incredible.
That's
honestly.
awesome.
Yeah.
What's your decision-making process in terms of how you decide to say no? Are there certain non-negotiables that if there's, if it crosses through those boundary lines that you're like, no, we don't do these types of projects, or we don't work with these kind of companies? Or, is there any established boundary lines for you that help you to because I think saying no is hard.
Saying no is hard. I doubt we're going to run a slushy stand, right? There's certain things that are just so far away from it. So I say that there's certain business models that just are so far away they're not going to touch. But there's some defining principles. Our purpose is peak performance, life elevated. So we're about trying to drive peak performance in an operation. But at the same time, and without hubris, your life should be improved by work. We all should be better off working together, or why are we doing something? And so with our customers, the customers should be better off in a partnership with us. It shouldn't be that we just benefit.
Right.
They should benefit. Everybody should benefit. So if an opportunity comes by that doesn't pass muster right off the bat with a peak performance, life elevated, probably not our bag. Probably needs to go to somebody else. At that point down, then it's like, okay, does this fit? Is this adjacent to the technologies we understand today and know, or the operations or those kind of things? Is it adjacent to a market that we're in that might be beneficial? Is it something our customers are asking for that may not align with exactly what we do, but they trust us and we trust them, and we can trail a path together to meet that opportunity? Those are a lot of the gates that we kind of fall through. But I'd like to say we're awesome at it. We say yes to a lot of things we shouldn't, and we say no to things maybe we should have said yes to.
Right.
But
it's
still it is, and it still ultimately comes down to people. We try to use analytics as much as we can, but it's still there's a lot of gut. There's a lot of gut across the room, and we have a narrative process where we draw it up, put the context and the outcomes we're looking for. We always try to start with the end in mind. All those things laid out, and then everybody in the company can kind of pile in and say, "Here's what I'm thinking." And I tend to believe this, and I've seen it happen multiple times. The path ultimately becomes clear, typically. Not always, but typically. And so that's the majority of our decision-making process, I would say.
But it sounds like you stay pretty close to your core. You know where you thrive, you know what areas you play well in, and you're comfortable saying, you know what, not a good match. And I love that approach of saying, we both want to win in this arrangement. And so if there's not going to be a mutual win, maybe there's other companies out there, and again, I think sometimes that's really hard for business owners, leaders, whatever, however you want to say it, to walk away from any opportunity,
For sure. There's going to be a lot more to get away, right? And it is what it is. But I don't know where this came to, so I can't give this attribute to anybody. But years ago when I was a kid, people would ask me, "What do you want to do?" And my response was, "I don't know what I want to do. I know who I want to be." And we're that way with Mountain Leverage. We today are the best in the world in a niche industry that's fantastic and awesome and cool. But we also know who we are. And so if another awesome opportunity came around the bend in a different industry or a different technology or whatever, a different model, if it fits who we are and we can go master that, we probably would. And so knowing who you are is where it all starts. So identity is there. Then come the behaviors, then come the feelings and the pay dirt and all that comes later. But that's kind of that helps us gauge the things as they come by.
No, that's really helpful. And something else, you talked about failure in previous in the conversation, and I do think there are a lot of people out there that do have great ideas and they're afraid to fail, and so they don't act on, because there's the dreaming and then the doing part, right? And I think the dreaming part is a lot easier because you don't have to put really any skin in the game. But the doing aspect, I think there's a lot of people out there that don't make it to that point because they're so afraid to fail. So I would love to hear your perspective on, maybe getting comfortable with failure, or however you talk about it, what you've learned from those experiences to keep driving forward.
Yeah. Of experience, of volume of experience, failure. I've got plenty of that, so I can speak to this with a doctorate degree. No, so yeah, I think there's a phrase we use at home, and we've kind of added to it. Win or learn or lose. And if you win, hey, you got it figured out. Maybe you were lucky.
Yeah.
Maybe from past learnings or failures, you've actually been able to win this go around. Or you lose by just not learning anything from it. And looking forward, as opposed to thinking every moment in time is a critical do or die moment. I mean, in some cases, life or death, it might be.
Right.
But in most cases for most people, it's not. And so if you can get beyond that and go, let me get out there and experience this, you're either going to win or learn. And if you don't learn from it, you lose.
Yeah.
So there's always something to learn from every exchange you have.
Yeah.
And so if it's win or learn, okay, I'm gonna win or I'm gonna learn. And if you look at it that way, all of a sudden the fear of failure kind of floats away a little bit. It might cost you some money.
Yeah.
Might cost you some time.
Mm-hmm.
It might cost you relationships and different things. I don't know, but ultimately you're gonna learn, which is valuable to win later.
Yes.
And this is where the obligatory let's beat up the school system or whatever else because they teach people not to. I don't know whether I buy all that.
Yeah.
The fact is, you have to be able to be excellent. You want to excel. So driving people to excellence is great. But I do think we need some room to let people just stumble and fall, and that's okay. Maybe you've got an infraction at school, or you missed this on a test, or whatever, or in life you've made a bad relationship decision or a bad business decision. It's just going to cost you money or time.
Yeah.
In most cases.
Yeah. You're right. And I think people get so whipped up about things that could happen.
Yeah.
And the odds of those things actually happening are usually a lot smaller than what people think. In their mind, it's like, oh my, I'm going to be bankrupt. If I start a business, I'll be bankrupt. And it's like, whoa.
Well, and there's
maybe, but most likely not.
So let's say you are, though. It's the old Stoic principle, and I can't remember what it's called, but you basically you catastrophize. You completely blow it all out. Okay, you go bankrupt. Then what?
So then what
are they going to eat you?
Yeah.
Well, they're not going to eat you. Okay, now what? Well, I go to work somewhere.
Start
okay.
over.
So, sometimes running it to the nth because your mind, and my mind does it. I'm not impervious to this. My mind will cycle over the scenario after scenario. So I got to play it out. Let's play it all out. At nth degree. Let's do the good. A lot of people spend a lot of time on the good. Let's do the bad too and not fear it. Then once you see it, shine a light on everything. Okay, there's bugs in the corner. Fine. I'm not scared anymore. When I heard that noise and didn't know what it was, I didn't know what it was. I was scared.
Yeah, but that's so true. And I think walking either yourself through or being able to walk someone else through that thought process of what is the worst that can happen. And then, okay, if that happens, then what would you do? Okay. And, and then suddenly people kind of realize, okay, well, I've survived that type of a situation before. I can do this again. It really diminishes the intensity of that fear, I think. It really kind of neutralizes it for people.
It does.
Doesn't make it always go away.
No,
but
some things are scary. Some of those things are scary, and it's okay.
Yeah.
So one of the phraseologies, I think it's attributed maybe to Lou Holtz, West Virginia guy. Maybe not. I don't know other people, but, what's important now? WIN. What's important now? Okay, this happened. What's important now?
Yeah.
What should you do now? And sometimes that's not super clear, but most of the time it's pretty clear. All right, now I need to pick myself up, dust myself off, go back to work.
Yeah.
We have another phrase we use a lot at our house, and I love it when I hear my kids say it, is, Reneman's never quit. We just don't quit.
Love it.
So we might get knocked down.
Yeah.
And we might not.
We will squabble.
We might not win that day, but we're going to learn, and we never quit.
Exactly.
And you start combining all that together, and you smoke it long enough, you believe it, and then there you are, you're outliving it, and that's kind of been our path, and it's our path at Mountain Leverage. And again, I say all that to say it sounds like it's hunky dory and everybody's happy and we never fail, and it's life,
no, that's
man.
Not reality.
Of course, we make bad decisions and failures and all the time, but it's the trend. Are we trending in that direction? And if you're trending, it's okay.
You learning from it?
That's right.
That's awesome. So I actually have not asked you, what is your definition of leadership? That's the one question I always ask everyone.
Yeah,
so I can't forget to ask you.
This is a little like asking me to go get peanut butter at the store. but no, here's the best thing I could say, because the problem, one of the challenges I find when leadership is talked about at just about every level, it's about the leader. And yes, you'll hear sometimes that parrot out, it's about the people, and I get all that. But really, in my opinion, leadership is about making sure a good leader will reflect what those that are following them the best about them.
Yeah.
They'll allow them to be, you're almost just a reflector. That's all you
Right.
are. You're there to help that person realize their best and to flourish. I don't need to motivate you if you're a motivated person. I don't need to lead you if you're already driven. All I need to do is make sure I'm reflecting back to you your greatness and let you go be your best. And that's leadership to me. And I know that's, kind of squishy, but.
Well said. I like that. That did not seem hard at all. That was not a peanut butter challenge at all for you.
Well, ask me tomorrow. I might give you a completely different answer.
It might be a different story. No, but I think it's true. And I do think it's about, I think Simon Sinek says it's not about, I'm going to screw it up now. It's not about being in charge. It's about the people in your charge.
Yeah.
And, kind of a very similar concept there.
Yep, for sure.
Love it. What have we not talked about? I feel like you and I are fast talkers. We've covered a lot here in a very quick period of time. People might have to slow down. You know how you can turn up the speed on a podcast? People might have to slow this one down.
I often say, I think it's an old Zig Ziglar thing or something. I talk 200 words a minute and sometimes Gus to 250. Especially when you get talking about stuff that is exciting to me. It does get exciting.
Anything we've left on the table that we didn't cover?
Man, I don't know.
I'll look at my notes. I think
one thing I would say that I feel is a superpower for anybody to get, because I don't think this is, our leaders made, you say your leaders born or made, yes. But one of the things I would go back to, and I find this every day, and it's absolutely superpower for me. I'll give you my superpower and my kryptonite. How about that?
Love it.
My superpower is gratitude. I really not just, thank you. I really take a moment and I really try to find, what am I grateful for?
Genuine gratitude.
Yeah, and man, it is a power. It will invigorate you like nothing else. And so I look at the people that I have that work at Mountain Leverage, that work with me and we're together. And look, I don't say work for me. And that's not just a semantical game I play to look humble.
Right.
That's because somebody needs to be in the role of the founder. It just happens to be me.
Yeah.
I'm in that role. Could be somebody else. And those people are filling their roles. We're all filling roles in something that's trying to be greater. And so those folks, I'm grateful for the magic that they bring to the show. Mm-hmm. And I hope hopefully they're grateful for the magic that I bring to the show. And that gratitude that extends in family, it extends everywhere. And when I find when I'm at my worst, I'm not being grateful. So for me, that is absolutely my superpower. The kryptonite side of me that I've got to fix, I don't celebrate enough, man. It's on to the next thing. It's win on to the next thing, win on the next thing. And I've got to stop a minute and go, and I just don't do enough of that. So I'm trying. The kids are helping me.
Yeah, but that's true. And especially if you have that mindset of the what's next. And there's so many, I guarantee probably, I should ask and not just assume, but there's probably more problems that you've identified than you would ever have the time or the resources to fix.
Absolutely.
So then it's like, you probably always feel like you're chasing, and so being able to stop and say, wait a second, I just accomplished like a lot of cool stuff. And this team just accomplished a lot of cool stuff.
That's
and
right.
that is a challenge for a lot of people. And it's important to talk about, because that impacts the people around you too. If they don't feel like if there's always more, you always just got to do more, and not recognize and celebrate.
There's a recent book on habits. I'm always trying to be. I'm terrible about habits. I could do something 150 days in a row and then just not. But anyway, BJ Fogg, I think he wrote, Tiny Habits. He's one of those guys. There's Atomic Habits. There's Tiny Habits. There's Giant Habits.
Habits.
And
those clearly others struggle with habits.
True. And by the way, Atomic Habits, Tiny, great books. But I think one of the things you talk about is celebration. Is absolute key. You got to have it. And so if I master it, I'll come back on and talk to you about it. But I'm not there yet. That's an area I'm trying to learn.
Have you back and you can talk about it.
Exactly.
All right. This has been awesome. Thank you so much.
I've enjoyed it.
I know you had an opportunity to talk to Jim on Positively West Virginia more about, Mountain Leverage as a company, but I think this has been a really cool opportunity just to get to know you better and your role at the organization, and also to talk about Unleashed Tigers. So.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate it. And grateful. I'm grateful for you. What you're doing, this is cool. And what Jim's doing is great. And I'm grateful to be here and happy to be a part of it. So thank you.
Awesome. Absolutely. Okay, we get lightning round. We do lightning round. Yeah, 60 seconds.
This gives me peanut butter anxiety here, but let's do it.
You got it. I'm quite confident in you. Okay, 60 seconds to answer as many questions as you can.
Okay.
You look terrified.
Okay.
All right, here we go. What season best fits your personality?
Season? Oh, man, probably spring.
Okay. What's your most used emoji in text?
The wink.
The wink. I don't think we've had that before. What book, song, movie, podcast has had the greatest impact on your life?
A giant whole, all of them. I think, probably 7 Habits by Covey was back in the 90s. That was when I was coming around.
Another Habits book.
Yeah, right.
That is a good one, though. It is a good one. What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I'm pretty out there. I don't think I'm too surprising. Huh. You stumped me on that one.
Stumped him. Do you have any like secret talents that people don't know about?
No, maybe that's it, that I'm talentless.
That would be surprising. I actually, and not believable. Fill in the blank. I spend too much money on.
I don't know. I don't have any hobbies. It's business. It's business and family. Another bad one.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. We got some work to do there. What celebrity would you want to play you in a movie? You can finish that.
Oh, a celebrity. Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, now that I'm older, I mean, when I was younger, maybe it was somebody different. Maybe I'd pick like Harrison Ford or George Clooney or somebody like that. I don't know.
Those are good
Sean Connery.
choices.
Oh, it's not like me at all, but I love it. Yeah, Clint Eastwood is who I would want to play me, but I'm not a Clint Eastwood guy, but I'd like to. Yeah,
he's cool. I think that's a good choice.
Yeah.
Oh, this was good. Thank you. Thank you again so much for being here, and I'm grateful that you were here today and spent some time with us. So thank you.
Thank you. Awesome.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it, Laura. Thanks.
You're welcome. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining in on this conversation, and until next time, shine bright, everyone.